the only way to conduct business is in a sustainable fashion, because any activity that takes away any possibility for future generations to continue is a net depleting activity and not a net accretive activity. And that I think is the framing around which we have to work. So I hope this question will never come up in the next 5 years as to why do you do business in a sustainable fashion. There are enough incidents and occurrences that are happening around the world that serve as a constant reminder of this looming and real threat that we have in front of us. We want to make sure that every member of the ecosystem in aviation is doing so much that you don't have to feel embarrassed about taking a flight anymore, because it's not such an irresponsible act in the first place. That is exactly how we earn our moral license to continue to do our business. So whether it's more expensive or not, I would say if you're not building it that way and therefore you're managing to build it cheaply, then you're literally cheating the system. Yep. You are defeating the very purpose of our existence.
That was Hari Marar, MD and CEO of Bengaluru International Airport Limited, on how the Kempe Gauda International Airport in Bengaluru, he and his team managers have been able to achieve USGBC's LEED Platinum certification. Only the second airport and the first of its size to have done so. Hi, I am Sathya Sankaran and you're watching the OoruLabs podcast. In this episode with Hari, we delve into his thoughts on sustainability and how the Bengaluru International Airport, spread over 4,000 acres, managed to become an example that the city it represents and the entire country can take a leaf out of. Let's jump in. Hari, thanks for being on the show.
Pleasure, an absolute pleasure to be on this show.
It's always a pleasure to be in the airport because it's one of like an escape areas for us where it gets you a lot of greenery and the operations are spick and span. We are able to go and enjoy it almost like a destination. I seem to spend more time eating in the quad than in the city. Why did you think it was important for the airport to be environmentally responsible or sustainable? Why did that thought come to you?
Let me first start by, sort of reflecting on the question in the first place. I think this is the way we need to start thinking about it. I don't think any business should question themselves on whether it requires for themselves to be sustainable or not in the first place. I think there is no other way to conduct business in this world. The only way to conduct business is in a sustainable fashion, because any activity that takes away any possibility for future generations to continue is a net depleting activity and not a net accretive activity, and that I think is the framing around which we have to work. So I hope this question will never come up in the next 5 years as to why do you do business in a sustainable fashion. This should not be only a question to start with, but in today's day and age, I think it's a very relevant question. And I'm going to talk about it from two perspectives. One is from external factors and one is from what drives us internally. I think from an external factors perspective, I think there have been enough warning signs in the world that have been telling us, there are enough incidents and occurrences that are happening around the world that serve as a constant reminder of this looming and real threat that we have in front of us, right? Just look at the record-breaking heat waves that we have seen in various parts of the world. Right, they have led to wildfires in California, bushfires in Australia. You've seen deaths in various parts of North India recently. Number of deaths you've seen in Saudi Arabia as part of the Hajj pilgrimage. Then, of course, freak weather phenomena that you will see regularly coming up, Hurricane Ida, or the flooding that you saw in UAE, where it's unheard of, or in Pakistan, or the kind of cyclones and storms we've been seeing around the world. The Arctic sea ice decline, the loss of biodiversity around the world, closer to the business that I come from, you must have heard of it. 2 recent freak accidents that took place, which resulted in planes dropping off from the sky. One hasn't heard too much about this phenomenon called clear air turbulence, which resulted in both those incidents where the aircraft just dropped because of turbulence that aircrafts cannot or the radars cannot spot. And these are increasingly believed to be caused by climate change. I think all of these things that I've spoken about provide a very clear and compelling evidence that climate change is not a distant or abstract threat, but a present reality, something that is a clear and present danger and has an immediate and severe impact on ecosystems, on economies, and of course, just on human lives itself, right? And then, of course, just if that was not good enough, I think there is an internal moral compass as well that drives us. Um, Staying on the external factors, there's another important aspect that I want you to also wanted to bring in.
Hmm.
I don't know whether you've heard of this new term that has been spoken of about a lot in Europe called Flugskam or flight shame, where
Hmm.
a lot of the youngsters are believing that taking a flight itself is an irresponsible decision because I think you're contributing to the carbon footprint in a very big way. So the through media propaganda and a lot of publicity, they're almost embarrassing people into not taking flights and taking other modes of transport. Right? You should be ashamed of taking a flight. And I think this trend is picking up. And I think for the industry, it's important that we change that, at least in India, before that even becomes a big thing here. We change that narrative here to say, hey, how can we stay ahead of the curve so that we do not cause that? We don't want you to feel embarrassed. We want to make sure that every member of the ecosystem in aviation is doing so much that you don't have to feel embarrassed about taking a flight anymore because it's not such an irresponsible act in the first place. So that's also one of the external factors that's driving us in thinking about it. But from an internal standpoint, I think what we are recognizing is that uh, from being a pure infrastructure business, if you've seen the dramatic way airports have, the nature of the airport business has changed. We're not
Hmm.
just a typical standard infrastructure business. There's so much of hospitality in it. There are so many businesses that are operating out of this campus. Today, we don't describe ourselves as an airport or as an infrastructure business. We call ourselves a business of businesses. And being a business of businesses, the impact that we have on environment and ecology are massive. So one of the messages that I give to the entire airport community. So in an airport, we have 100 plus different stakeholders that do different functions, from airlines to ground handling to cargo to catering to retail, food and beverage, fashion, hospitality. There's just tons of businesses that are here. But to all the members of the ecosystem, one of the key messages that I give is that, listen, one of the reasons why we have the opportunity to do the business that we do is because there is this environment and this ecology and this ecosystem that enables us to do this business. We are all beneficiaries of the abundance that is gifted to us by this fantastic ecosystem that we are privileged to be part of, and therefore it's incumbent on us to ensure that this is protected, that this is
Hmm.
looked after. So whether it's environmental sustainability, protection of ecology, all of that is a very important part of what we do because we are all beneficiaries of it, and therefore it's incumbent of us to try and give back as well. And last but not the least, I think the way I frame this whole thing is that is exactly how we earn our moral license to continue to do our business. And that I think is the way we look at it. That's why sustainability is a very integral part of almost everything that we do.
So the moral license is something that has many words to it, but at the end of the day, most of us who are in the business of producing goods and creating consumption, which drives our growth and everything else, need to have that moral license. And at least from that viewpoint, in our own self-interest, don't you think more industries should be doing? But let me ask it, there might be the cost implications. It's not easy. There is a cost to doing things differently in an environmental sustainable way. In the medium to long term, does it actually pay off? Do you think the costs that you have incurred is actually more or less in doing all of these things? Or is it just that you don't think about it that way at all? Because there's a cost to putting up an environmental friendly infrastructure, which includes maybe additional things. We will go into the details of what you did on energy and all those things. But is there a cost to being environmental friendly? And does it pay off in the long run for even industries and others in the city to be able to say that I'll afford that capex because in the long term it pays off on its own?
So again, I'll frame this in two different ways. One is really focus on specifically the question as to whether it's more expensive or not, and secondly, whether that's really a choice. Should I follow rules because following rules is more expensive? Should I do the right thing because doing the right thing is more expensive? Is simply not even a question that we should be asking ourselves. Uh, I think there is only one way to build infrastructure. Build infrastructure that does not take away from. So the principle that we follow is that we must leave behind the world, the campus, the land, the environment in a better condition than what we found it, right? And I think from that perspective, if you have to build infrastructure that is environmentally responsible, is sustainable, it's the only way to go, right? So whether it's more expensive or not, I would say if you're not building it that way and therefore you're managing to build it cheaply, then you're literally cheating the system.
Yep.
You are uh, defeating the very purpose of our existence, right? I mean, I think that's simply the wrong way to look at it. There is no other way to do it. I think there is only one way to build infrastructure, that's by embracing the sustainable principles. Having said that, there are two parts to it. There are parts of it that are more expensive than building infrastructure not sustainable. For example, if you have to build a LEED Platinum certified building, it is at least 15 to 20% more expensive. And when it comes to large infrastructure projects, they are in large numbers, and therefore the questions could be raised as to why would you want to build it this expensive. But my point is, there is only one way to build it, and that's really the way to build it. It can be more expensive. But secondly, there are parts of it that are actually so attractive from a financial standpoint to do that and that sort of pays for itself in the long run, including this more expensive infrastructure. So for instance, from a renewable energy standpoint, it's a no-brainer. Your non-renewable energy from the grid is, today it's roughly about 10 rupees a unit, and cost of producing solar energy is around 3.5 rupees today, right? And so obviously there's a huge advantage, huge cost arbitrage in embracing sustainability principles. Take a look at water. We're water positive. During the recent crisis in Bengaluru, when we had severe shortage of water across the city during the peak summer months, you would recall that, we had the ability to meet almost 66% of our total requirement from within our own campus. So we have 3 million liters approximately consumption per day, 3 million liters per day. Today, we are harvesting from within our own campus close to 2 million liters, and every day. And this water is at no cost, right? We've built that infrastructure for the long run, and that's our water to use in the way we want to, right? Of course, there is some infrastructure to be built for pumping, for making sure that it can be distributed across the campus, for treating it, and things like that. But net, it's a much cheaper source of water. So all in all, I think there are advantages using LED lights. Why would you not use LED lights? I mean, total cost is, the total life cycle cost is lower than, taking, let's say, cheaper fittings and then consuming more expensive electricity to use them. So net, I think it sort of balances out altogether.
Fair enough. I think the cost to the environment and all of those things which are not directly costed, which is like the hidden cost of consequences, are also some things that don't show up on your P&L directly unless you do something else. I just wanted to come back to this whole airport itself and understand the experience, because a lot of airports, especially in the West, are predominantly functional, right? I mean, they're non-distinct. They're quite staid. You just go there, you treat it as a destination which you just use as a station to go somewhere else. In fact, you said you are treating it more like an ecosystem of partners and an experience that you want to give to people. But I have increasingly noticed, especially in T2, that and in airports in South Asia, they are quite distinct. They seem to carry the flavor, and you have tried to do that in the airport, is represent the culture of the place where you are situated, right? Tell me how you wanted the airport to represent Bengaluru and Karnataka. Why was that important?
To be honest, Satya, this is slowly becoming more and more important as far as airport development is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
It started from, let's say, Southeast Asia. This is where it started from. This region is where it really started from.
Okay.
And now it's becoming more and more prevalent in many parts of the world. There's a term for it. It's called sense of place, creating a sense of place, right? And I think that is what we've tried to do. What is the reason to do something like this? Airports are the face of any city, right? If you just look at the way cities have developed, they've always been so. Originally, of course, the primary mode of transport was using ships, and therefore along rivers is where cities were developed in the first place. And then as train or rail travel became more and more prevalent, you'll see that the most iconic infrastructures in it, most of the big cities around the world, were the beautiful railway stations that they built. So cities were always developed around, um, you know, uh, mega
Transit, yeah.
transportation hubs. Third, and now as we have moved into aviation, what you will find is that aviation has become that transport mode that connects places, that connects economies, that connects and actually builds all the relationships on the basis of which world trade and economy functions today. So therefore, airports have become that symbol of that city, and that they literally represent that city. Airports are also portals. Look at them as portals. They're portals through which the region engages with the world and sees the world, but it's also the portal or the window through which the world sees the region and experiences that city or that particular region. And I think as airports, if you really embrace that philosophy really well and choose to represent the city and the region in the best possible manner, I think that gives a true sense of place. I think then you're really doing your job well. And I think that is what we saw as an opportunity when we were developing Terminal 2. And we wanted to make sure that we weave that philosophy of representing what the city stands for and what the city should stand for. In a sense, we've also taken a few aspirational elements to it, right? So, for example, we believe Bengaluru needs to be a sustainable city. So we've adopted those principles simply because we believe that's what the new Bengaluru or the new India must represent, right? So Bengaluru, Karnataka are our principal focus, but we are also representing India at large. We are also the face of new India, the face of the developing India, right? So I think that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do, and we weave into every aspect of it. So if you start with taking a broad, big picture, the campus development itself, the master plan, the campus development itself, I think the fact that you will see the campus becoming more and more vibrant in terms of its the ecology, or the ecological diversity that we are developing inside the campus, it's part of what Karnataka stands for. It's part of what Bengaluru stands for. So we've practically got almost every endemic species in Karnataka we have in our campus. We've brought that into our campus. We want the campus to for people to be reminded of what Bengaluru was and needs to be, which is a green, beautiful city. Uh, Not just green, but also, in all the lakes that we are developing, we're also trying to remind people that, hey, listen, it's also a city of beautiful lakes. So if you drive along the airport, you'll see there are, 3-4 lakes on both sides, and then more lakes developing, because it's not just the aesthetic value that the lakes bring, but also the fact that they're an important part of our water sustainability program in the long run. So that's at a high level when you look at the campus. But we're also weaving that into the design, for instance, of Terminal 2. So in Terminal 2 itself, it's a terminal in a garden. So, if you go back to the earlier principle that I spoke about, that we are reflective, it's the portal through which the world sees us, and we see the world. Similarly, even the landscape program also reflects that. So, for instance, inside the Terminal 2, all the plants that you see represent the best of what the global biodiversity has to offer. But around Terminal 2, all the plants that you see are actually from the region. So you get to see both perspectives. Then, of course, in all the materials that are used inside Terminal 2, right? Whether it's the exposed brickwork, the natural materials like bamboo, all of that reflects. The stone is from our region. It's less than 200 kilometers away. The flooring. So in each of these elements, we've tried to bring in what Bangalore stands for, and of course, not to forget the art program. So we also put together an art program under a overall theme of Navrasa. One of the things that you'll realize about airports is that airports are melting pots of human emotion. It's a place where you can see human emotion in its multi-hued splendor, right? At any given point of time, every emotion is on full display at the airport, from joy to reunions to sadness to anger, everything that you will see at an airport. So our art program sort of covers that, and it represents art forms from the region, right? We also incorporated handicrafts, and elements like, for example, Bidri or Channapatna into even store designs. We've even given the challenge to our stores that as you develop, can you please incorporate some of these elements into that? Or hand painted walls. You'll see a lot of hand painted walls in Terminal 2, and they're all meant to convey some element of the local culture, local art and art form. But, how I see it is that this is actually part of our larger sustainability story itself.
Mm.
I don't want this to be seen as an art program that's separate. And why do I call this as part of sustainability story? Because, the way I define sustainability is that typically in the wake of progress, we leave behind, let's say, a graveyard of many things that stood before it. And our aim is that as we progress, we must carry with us by protecting, preserving, and promoting all the good things that stood even before we start the development. And that goes beyond just ecological or environmental
Mm.
sustainability, that goes into art form, handicrafts, culture, traditions, music, dance, language, Kannada
Mm.
language. All of this are parts of what we like to promote. So, for example, at the airport, we celebrate every single festival that is here, whether it's Ugadi, Dasara, and we do that with a whole lot of show and pomp and display. It's a very dramatic experience that we have here. From a language standpoint, we are promoting the Kannada language, and we are promoting in every possible way by making sure Kannada first. Or dance and music, we celebrate the local dance forms. For example, the whole month of the Rajyotsava, we have celebrations across our campus that promote local culture. Even the choice of our stores inside our airport, we
Mm.
bring in the local champions, right?
Mhm.
So, for example, food, the local food, whether it's through Mayas or Nandi Upchar or a homegrown brand like Hatti Kapi, promoting coffee as a commodity across our campuses. Coffee is a big celebration because Karnataka is responsible for 60% of India's coffee exports. So we bring about coffee in a very big way across the campus. So it's not just in the design elements, but across everything that we do, we try to promote. Now that we are coming up with a very interesting store in Terminal 2 in partnership with the state government, where everything that Karnataka is famous for will be
Mhm.
represented in that store, including GI tagged fruits, vegetables, and their produce will be available in that particular store. So the idea is to promote everything great that Karnataka and Bangalore stands for, and this is something that excites us. We don't see it as a responsibility, we don't see it as a burden, but we see this as a great opportunity that really truly excites us.
Yeah, so I don't need to travel all over the world. I just have to go to the airport now to see Karnataka. But it's
Absolutely.
interesting. The loudest thing that stands out to me is the bamboo. I just go to T2 and I see the big structure made out of bamboo, and I'm thinking, what made you pick that? And in general, what is sustainability in the building, the built form, and the materials that you use? I know you chose it to represent something, but in terms of maintenance, in terms of longevity, have you thought through and what are the different kinds of things you went through when you started picking these materials? Because that's the biggest thing that stands out in as this is different, you know.
So from a Terminal 2 design standpoint, there are many elements. I mean, while that it's almost symbolic. The bamboo has almost become symbolic of Terminal 2, but there are many elements to it. But let me, around the bamboo itself, I think we picked it because bamboo is being increasingly recognized across the world as a very sustainable material and is being used increasingly for many uses. So it's not just in terms of building material, and there's a lot of work that's happening in terms of just building material. But apart from that, for furniture, for fixtures, for many things, bamboo is being used. And we thought bamboo is a great way to show that you can use sustainable materials in cladding infrastructure. Of course, there's steel at the back of it, which provides the structural stability to the building. But for cladding, we generally end up using a lot of artificial material, and we
Mhm.
wanted to use natural material so that we give it uh, not just aesthetically pleasing to people, but also a warm environment, and most importantly, the fact that we are sustainable to as a principle to start with. But apart from and sorry, to also reflect on us for a second on how's the longevity of this. I think this has extensively been tested before being put to use. Our designers and our construction partners, with them, we extensively tested the bamboo. including the fact that when we designed it up front, right in front of our project office, we set up a mini terminal 2, like really one 18-meter by 18-meter structure, which was designed exactly like terminal 2, including the bamboo there, which we allowed exposed to the rain. We just said, leave it out in the rain, let there be rain, sun, all of that, and let's see how it lasts in an external environment, and then we'll know how it will work in an internal environment. And I must say, even in an external environment, it lasted very beautifully. So I think we won't do anything unless it can last. Plus, there is, of course, maintenance programs around it. When you design something and when you decide to use a particular material, that material will not be used in the building unless we first figured out what is the long-term maintenance program around it. So for everything that's in Terminal 2, there is a long-term maintenance program already part of our manuals that we will sort of factor into and practice and continuously put into place over a long-term period of time. Apart from that, I think there are so many beautiful elements, right? The hanging bells and whales, the green walls. We've got 10,000 square meters plus of green walls inside Terminal 2. Look at the natural light inside Terminal 2.
Yeah.
We've created those massive skylights and literally almost 12% of the roof area is that reduces energy consumption and lighting energy required for lighting by 25%. Just
Wow.
that natural light that comes in, right? We've used energy efficient chillers, pumps, and systems. The whole of Terminal 2 uses only treated waste, treated water. So from in front of Terminal 2 are 2 lagoons or lakes. We capture rainwater in that, and only treated water from that is what you're getting in Terminal 2. So it's water neutral to start with, right? So, a very wide, let's say, diversity of ecology that you will find inside Terminal 2. Vegetation literally accounts for almost 31% of the total built area inside Terminal 2. So, I mean, there are many, many things that one can speak about that sort of contribute from a built infrastructure standpoint to this building. And as a result of that, Sathya, this is the second terminal in the world and the largest of its kind in the world that received US GBC's LEED Platinum certification, as the building was developed. So this was a unique feature of what we've done in T2.
So most of our development also relies is directly proportional to our energy consumption, right? At the end of the day, if we want to become the big economy that we are going to suck up more energy. And we also notice that we are wasting a lot of it as well. And you mentioned earlier that you've been able to reduce the unit cost of energy because of the solar that you're using. Tell me a little bit about your energy usage and how you have been able to transform that to, because this is an example. That's the first thing I think each one of us should try and tackle, right? Whether it is individuals or corporates or anybody, energy is and its intensity and the way we use it and how much efficiency we bring out of what we have, I think is going to be the biggest story in our transition to net zero. Tell me a little bit about that in the airport.
If I can step back for a second, because unless I frame it right, you're not going to understand where the energy piece plays a role. The energy piece or the net zero part of the energy piece is a sub-element of the 6 pillars that we have of our sustainable development program, right? So our sustainable development program is centered around 6 pillars: net zero emissions, carbon emissions, water stewardship, circular commitment to a circular economy, then of course sustainable procurement, sustainable mobility, and community aligned noise management. Noise is always an issue when it comes to an airport. These are the 6 core pillars around which we have centered our development. And under the net zero carbon emissions is all our energy efficiency bit, right? So it's a big umbrella, and this is a narrow slice of what we are speaking about. So first and foremost, I think one of the things that delights me is the fact that as we have embarked on this journey to develop this campus into becoming a real business of businesses, there are multiple businesses, and it's not just a pure aeronautical business or not an infrastructure business. The energy consumption has gone up dramatically, right? Because there are so many things. There are hotels here. There are There are so many moving parts across the campus, large engines that chug in this area, all of them consuming a lot of energy. Acutely conscious of that, we set ourselves on the fact that on the journey of saying that we will always be energy neutral. Today, Satya, it just gives me great joy to say that we consume only 100% renewable energy across the entire campus.
Wow.
Right. So about roughly speaking, 75% of it comes from solar and 25% comes from wind. And we use a combination of methods as far as this is concerned. So from a energy generation standpoint, almost all our rooftops are got solar panels. T2 rooftop, we started a little late because what we wanted to do was stabilize the roof. Make sure when you build a large infrastructure like this, there will be a few leaks here and there. It's a massive infrastructure. So we've got to stabilize that, take it through a couple of rain cycles, make sure that the roof is completely watertight. And now we've started that. In a month or so, 7 megawatts of energy, 6.5 to 7 megawatts of energy will be produced from the rooftop of the Terminal 2. We've got also by the runway, our old northern runway, on the north side of the northern runway, we've got existing solar farm. Now we're building another one on the southern side. So there's solar farms on both sides of the runway. Then, of course, we've got offsite development in North Karnataka. We've got two partners who are producing energy for us. And recently we've signed with CleanMax a group captive with 26% equity partnership from our side, which will take care of our energy needs for the foreseeable future, ensuring that it's always going to be 100% renewable. One might be tempted to believe that since we are producing our own renewable sources of energy, we can be fairly indiscriminate and irresponsible about how we consume electricity. But I think that's the farthest thing from our thought. I think we're also acutely conscious of the fact that we must reduce consumption. We must drive down consumption. After driving down consumption, and when you come to the most optimized level of energy consumption, that must be through renewable sources. That's the way we look at it. So there are a slew of things that we do with regards to reducing our energy consumption as well. So first and foremost, 100% of our fittings are LED across the campus, right? Our second runway that we built was, I think, the first one in Asia Pacific. I don't want to be, I'm probably putting myself out there by saying this, but if I'm not mistaken, we were the first airport in the world to set up, in Asia Pacific, to set up a runway which was powered only through LED lights, right? So this was an interesting development. But we always like to be on the cutting edge of experimentation on these factors. So for example, for our air conditioning, which is one of the largest consumers of electricity, we've got chiller plant optimization tools that optimize the consumption of power as far as chillers are concerned. We use smart energy meters across the campus to track where energy is consumed and how can we drive down the cost of electricity. So across the board, there are many elements that go into reducing the consumption of electricity on one side. Of course, and if you remember, I just mentioned to you a second ago that all the natural light, and this goes across Terminal 1 and Terminal 2, across both terminals, we can literally switch off lights through the day if you've got broad sunlight, because you don't need any this thing at all, any lighting at all.
Artificial.
Then, of course, no artificial lighting at all. And, many of our car parks as well have got solar panels on top of them that produce electricity. So across the board, there are many elements that go into reducing consumption and also, therefore, driving renewable usage as well. So I think both these together sort of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I guess you used all the opportunities and not left anything on the table.
I'd not like to believe that. I'm driving my team to try and find more ways to try because there's always an opportunity. I tell you, if a third eye walks in and looks at it, they'll be able to point us out, point 10 different things to us as to areas of improvement. Maybe some of them will be already part of our program and our plan. You can't. I'm the last one to say we've got it all sorted out. There are many things that we still have to do, and I think. But the important thing is, I believe that most of them will be part of our plan. But
Yeah.
if somebody stands and points out this opportunity and say, "Hey, why haven't you done this?" We'll be the most glad to add that to our list of things to do.
Fair enough. You spoke a bit about water, but waste is something that is very important in this city and everywhere else. As consumption increases, it's natural we have waste that what we don't use is going to go out somewhere. Tell me about how you're trying to manage waste, whether it is in the form of sewage or solid or food. You have lots of partners, lot of activities, lots of things happening. Is there anything you're trying to manage there that is a story to tell?
Of course, the simplest one, sewage treatment plant, is the easiest thing. So I think we've got sewage treatment plant with a 5.5 million liters per day capacity, and I'm very proud to say that it's probably one of the top performing plants that I've seen. Very high quality. I think even the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board has come and called it a model plant, saying that it's a really high quality plant. So we're very proud of quality of plant that we have. And as part of our circular economy that we're establishing, we're trying to establish complete circularity, right? So the most obvious thing to do is to take the water that comes out of the sewage treatment plant and reuse that. So we use all the water that comes out of the sewage treatment plant after treatment and making sure that we maintain certain specific quality parameters. We reuse that for all the landscaping requirements at the airport, for the chiller, for the chillers as well, for the HVAC. Our requirement doesn't end there. We need even more than that. So we buy treated water from the city as well, right? Just point, so that we can reuse treated water from the city. Also, the sludge that comes out after the sewage treatment, we convert that into manure, and that is also used across all our. Everything that comes out of the sewage is 100% reused. From a solid waste management perspective as well, I must say that we are at this point in a very advanced stage. We're probably a few days away from launching and operationalizing our integrated solid waste management plan. Some parts of it are already implemented because, let's say, the segregation system, all of that is already put into place. We collect all the waste from across the campus and take it to our solid waste management plan. And in that solid waste management plant, segregate it and treat them separately. As far as again there, the principle that we are trying to follow is complete circularity, right? And we want to extend that to including our community engagement also into this whole thing, and I'll tell you how. So from a solid waste management perspective, we take, let's say, the bio waste, right? All the wet waste, and we convert. So we've got a biodigester, we put it into that and convert that into gas. And the interesting thing is that we take that gas and our plan is to, and we've not yet started producing that gas. It'll happen in the next 1 or 2 months. But that gas will then go to feed the kitchens in which the same food is produced, which will then become waste and come back and feed the gas plant, right? So it's a complete circularity that's achieved there. So the gas produces the food creates waste, the waste comes back and then becomes the gas again that goes back in there. The rest of the solid waste as well, we plan to achieve complete circularity. We want to reuse everything. So, for example, plastic, we want to reuse that by creating self-help group employing women from the local villages to use the plastic that we recycle in the airport to create products which can then be sold back in the airport itself, right? Can we create plastic waste bins that we will place at various places in the airport? Excess ones we can sell in the airport so that people who travel through the airport can buy waste bins from the airport using plastic that has been generated at the airport. Paper can be reused inside as stationery for us, for our various requirements and so on and so forth. So in the process, we also want to create livelihood and opportunities for the local communities to get involved. And they can be part of this whole circularity. So this is one area we want to achieve 100% circularity. And last thing is, we're talking about circularity, about how we want to use all the waste. But just like I spoke about energy, we're also driving down waste. So our commercial team that manages all our retail and food and beverage operations, you won't believe this, Sathya, they go out and measure weigh every single kilo of waste that comes out of wet waste that comes out of restaurants in our airport. And we have competitions amongst all the restaurants as to who produces the least amount of waste per passenger that they have served. Right?
Mhm.
We measure the total amount of waste, divide by the total number of passengers that they have served, and measure the number of grams of waste produced per passenger served. And we have competitions amongst them, and we incentivize them to drive down the total amount of wet waste. And that, I think, is an important measure by which we reduce the total amount of waste in the campus.
I want to segue this and take you to the broader city, because the airport, like you mentioned, is a portal to the city and the state and increasingly the country as well. And when people land, they carry nice impressions of this and say, okay, this is Bengaluru, maybe. Now, how do we ensure that the real Bengaluru outside can kind of take examples from here? I know it is a far more complex environment outside. It is not as controlled as the airport alone, but you have experience of implementing these things at large scale. These are large projects. It's not trivial in nature, even though it may be controlled and you have control. It has its own sets of processes and systems that help you streamline these things. Which aspects of these can carry over to the city in a larger way? And how do you think the city and its constituents, including industry, including individuals, but especially the corporates, you talked about moral imperatives, right? Shouldn't they be stepping up as well? And how can they probably come experience, set things up? It's not that they don't know, but it's always useful to have a good sounding board of large infrastructure. And how can the builders, for example, include the moral imperative into their, because they also have to step up to the plate at some point, and many big ones are doing. It's the smaller ones who struggle. How do we institutionalize these things, and how do you get the government to think about this? And because they are a part of the airport, they are seeing it, they know it, and how do they bring the complexity out and try to, how do you look at the city? How can they emulate what you have built in the airport?
When we started our sustainability journey, of course, the vision has evolved over a period of time. But the first vision that we set ourselves when we spoke about from a sustainability standpoint was that we wanted to be a role model for sustainable progress. And if you see, there are three parts to this, right? One is progress. We want to be an organization that stands for progress, that's always doing things that's new, innovative, creative, right? So progress is a very important element of what we want to do. But that progress is not complete unless it's sustainable. So that's the second aspect of our vision, that in everything that we do, we must be sustainable. But what is the point of sustainable progress if you're not able to inspire others to follow? And therefore, the first part of the vision statement, which is to be a role model, right? And many people say, we got to be modest about what we do, focus on what you're doing, and don't bother about whether you're impressing upon others what you're trying to do. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. If you're doing something right, we must go out and speak about it, because that's the only way we'll get everybody to. A lot of what we do has been inspired by what we see others doing as well.
Mhm.
We're not. I mean, I don't want to call ourselves out to be. If you do a few things right, but I want to be very clear that we've also learned a lot from a lot of leading companies and campuses in the city as well. For example, what LCTA is doing in Electronic City is fantastic. It's really worth emulating, right? Companies like Biocon, Infosys, Wavepro, all of them in their campuses, they are all massively committed to sustainability. And at no point do I want to kid myself into believing that we are above and beyond some of these companies. So we have learned a lot from them as well. And in a similar fashion, we would like others to learn a little bit from us as well, because I think we do a few things right. And I think that's the sort of relationship that we want to create. Not, here we are here to teach you and therefore come and learn from us, but let's learn from each other. And that kind of model is something that I'd like to propagate and speak about. So there are many, I think some of the things that we do well, we've spoken about everything to do with environmental and ecological sustainability. And all those things are things that we are willing to share and speak about and share without any expectation of any return. I think the idea is, this will only help to leave behind a better world. So from that perspective, we're not talking about this from a consultancy standpoint or anything. The idea is to go out there and share with people so that more and more people can do this. But it's not just that. The other aspect, I think, what we do well is urban planning. Right? How we have a master plan that goes up to 60 years. And one of the things that we do well is that we create a picture of what this airport's got to look like 60 years from now and build backwards, right? We've got everything in. So we know at no point will we hurt our chances for developing this airport in the way it needs to be developed over the long run, because the long-term master plan that follows the best principles of urban planning takes into account everything that needs to be done over the next 60 years to make sure that the airport can continue to grow and develop in the manner that we want it to. Similarly, I think the other thing that I think we do well is how we embrace tech principles, a lot of technology into what we do, not just in terms of design, because we use 3D design tools and things like that to develop designs for the whole campus. But apart from that, including in operations and maintenance of this facility. So 4,000 acres is like a small city. And to run a city, I think you need to use technology in the smartest possible way, so that sitting remotely, you can ensure that everything across the 4,000 acre campus is working the way it's meant to. So that's another element that we'd like to promote. For instance, the whole landscaping piece, the irrigation is controlled entirely by technology. We do micro dosing of water so that we don't overwater plants or underwater plants, precisely based on the need of the water, based on sensors that we have planted in the soil that tells you what the root zone temperature is, tells you what the evapotranspiration rate is, tells you what the relative humidity level is, and based on that we dose water. So elements like that, I think are elements that we can share with the city. The other thing that we do really well, for example, is collaboration and partnership. From a corporate standpoint, I think we would be amongst the most complex, yet what I call delightfully complex ecosystem that you can think of. We've got so many partners. An airport cannot function unless that collaboration amongst all these partners really works well. And as the airport operator, our principal role is to make sure that that collaboration happens, that everybody is literally rowing to the same beat. And I think that how to bring collaboration amongst various stakeholders and running a city to make sure the city runs well is also cannot happen unless all the members of the community, the ecosystem that makes a city, come together and do their bit. And how to make that collaboration happen, how to get everybody aligned to the same vision, all of that is something that we do well as well. I think that's another element that we can share. And sharing comes from things like, for example, talking to you. We're hoping that a few people see this and get inspired and come and talk to us. By the way, a lot of people are doing that. We do a lot of partnerships already with various people in the city, and that's not to undermine all the efforts that are going on right now, but there's a lot more that can happen. So the other important thing that we do, Sathya, is not just corporate partnership or city level partnership. I think the most powerful tool that we have is that, just look at it this way: the airport is a platform that brings together 40 to 50 million people together a year. How many platforms can have access to so many people a year? So I look at the airport platform as a powerful tool to communicate messages, right? So we use, and I think you'll see a lot more of it. So through our social media, through efforts in the airport as you're traveling through the design of the terminal itself, at every step of the way, we are trying to communicate to people to say, hey, this is a very positive way to develop. This is the right way to live. For example, through our messages of water, if everybody who travels to the airport can make a small difference in their life at home and say, hey, can I use water more responsibly? Can I use energy more responsibly? Can I recycle the waste at home? If we can send out positive messages like this, more than communicating to corporates, if I can impact a few million lives a year, I think that's our job well done. And I think that's a responsibility that we take very seriously, including messages of diversity, inclusion, right? For example, we've set up 2 Mitti cafes at the airport. I don't know whether
yeah.
I think just imagine the power when people walk through the airport, see the Mitti cafe and see people who, severely physically challenged people doing jobs like normal people, right? And normal as we call them normal. It's meant to inspire people to say, hey, we must try and aim for inclusion in our lives. And I'm so delighted to say that some of these are really paying off. So, for example, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Chief Justice or somebody from the Supreme Court saw the Mitti Cafe here and decided that we need to have a Mitti Cafe at the Supreme Court. And there is a Mitti Cafe that opened at the Supreme Court some time back. And recently, now they've opened a store at the Rashtrapati Bhavan as well. This, I think, are great examples of how the airport gets adopted, or the principles of the airport get adopted in the city and in the larger communities and in the larger lives of people. And that's the aim that we're trying to achieve.
This is amazing. On that note, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. This is just wonderful, the kind of things airport is doing, and that last bit of how you can actually convince people, 50, 60 million coming in and seeing sustainable stuff for themselves and experiencing it, and probably hearing about how the airport runs and how you have included the moral imperative of being environmentally sustainable into your business and making it a core part. I'm sure serves as an example. And I really thank you for taking your time out, Hari, and coming and sharing all of these things with us.
Thank you, Sathya. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.